now, the next set of notes, we're going to look at what's called margin of error. All right, because we cannot take a poll, we don't, or cannot, because it's too big, typically. We don't pull an entire population, but what we do is we take a random sample of the population. Based on that random sample, we estimate how the overall population behaves. Right. Now, because we cannot pull everybody, there is error involved. That error that we figure out in statistics, and there are different types. If you take an actual statistics class, they'll go into more detail on all the different types. But we keep it at the bare minimum. We look at these. Again, remember, we're just giving you a taste of what's going on with statistics here. And so we're going to look at the basic, sort of what we call the rule of thumb margin of error. Again, there's an additional video if you want to see that I've gone into more detail on exactly what it means. But like I said, we're going to keep it basic here in this set of notes. All right, we're going to look at what we need to know for this note. It gives you a taste of what the statistical marginal error is. All right, so the margin of error of a poll expresses how close to the true result. Right, the true result would be what the actual population would actually do, and where that population's true result will be expected to lie. So it's a range that we actually end up getting. All right, so the marginal error is a statistical expression. Can't read. A statistic, not statistical. A statistic expressing the amount of error in a poll result. All right, the higher the margin of error, the less confident one should be about the poll result. So if it's a high margin of error, you shouldn't be very confident in whatever the poll gives you. All right, kind of take it with a grain of salt, so to speak. But if it's a small margin of error, then it's probably a pretty good estimation of the population. But it could still be off, right? Even the best polls, because of the way random sampling works, you could be very off from what the actual population does, because you might random sample just on random accident a group of people that tend to skew differently than the actual population. All right, the marginal error is based on the size of our sample. The bigger the sample, the smaller the margin of error. Right, that's the idea. The bigger the sample, the closer you are to the population, the closer you are to the actual expression, the actual percentage, the actual average value of the population. All right, the rule of thumb that we'll be using and finding in this class is the confidence interval for 95%. So the 95% confidence interval is the following formula, which is given to you in the formula sheet. It's labeled on the formula sheet M.E, so just be aware that means marginal error. But this is, again, given to you. It's on the chapter 6, at the very bottom, underneath the Z tables. You can find it there on the formula sheet. Alright, so in order to find the marginal error using the 95% confidence interval, and we'll talk about what that confidence interval means in a little bit. You take 100 divided by the square root of n. N is the sample size. How many people in your poll? That's what n represents. So you take 100 divided by the square root of the sample size. Right? And then that gives you a percent. That percent is what it gives you. It's giving you a percent error in your percent estimate for the population. Alright, so again, just to make sure you're aware of the M in this case is marginal error. When you do look at the formula sheets that's given to you for the tests and quizzes, it does say ME, right, and the sample size. Alright, so let's do a couple examples. Suppose that I take a sample size of 400. My marginal error is 100 divided by the square root of 400. And make sure you're careful, it's 100 divided by the square root of 400. That gives me out a percent. Alright, so when we do that division, actually the square root of 400 is 20, and so I know that's going to come out 5% would be my marginal error. Alright, the marginal error if we take a slightly bigger sample size. So based on what I said before, this margin of error should be smaller than 5%. Now it's not a whole lot smaller than 5%, but it should be smaller because I'm taking a bigger sample. Alright, so the margin of error, if we have a slightly bigger group of people polled, we poll 100 more people, so it's 100 divided by the square root of 500. And again, this one I'm just going to type all out at once on the calculator because you do not want to round anything in this class until the end. 100 divided by the square root of 5 comes out 4.47, so 4.47% is the margin of error. So again, they're close, but this one's a little better, right? Because you took a bigger group, it's closer to the population sample size, so it's a little better. Alright, so that's the margin of error and how we find the margin of error. All right, I'm going to actually stop there so that you know what marginal error is. In the next set of notes, I'm actually going to talk about confidence intervals, so we'll get there in the next set.